Gentlemen. So
Sure.
glad to see you again.
Once
So
again.
glad to see you again.
Pleasure is all ours.
I really appreciate you sitting with me so I could seek your wise counsel, as always.
Urban Christian Veterans provides a safe place for Christian veterans of color to discuss the challenges you face in your daily lives. Being a person of color has its challenges. Being a Christian has its challenges. Being a veteran has its challenges. All of those factors being combined makes for a unique and sometimes difficult life experience that is seldom talked about in public forums. Thank you for tuning in to the Urban Christian Veterans Podcast. Here's your host, D. Allen Rose.
Thank you, Aaron, for that wonderful introduction. This is D. Allen Rose, and you are listening to the Urban Christian Veterans Podcast. So I have this question, and this question is, if no one would ever know, would you still do the right thing? If no one would ever know, would you still do the right thing? What say you?
Ooh, I would say it depends.
It's all on the repercussions.
It depends, because I do stuff like, if I'm walking around and I see some trash on the ground, I pick it up, throw it in the garbage.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
Okay.
Nobody would never know. Nobody tell me to do it, and I still do that. I mostly started doing that because my kids used to be in the car, and I wanted them to see that. The integrity, the whole integrity thing. So I was really big, because I had all boys and a girl. So I was really big on showing, letting my actions speak for me. And I wanted them to see me do stuff like that. So you talk about stuff like that. But I had this thing in my head when I was younger, way younger, is if I'm not on this continent, then it don't count. It don't count. I ain't on this continent. I'm not in this hemisphere. We ain't in the same hemisphere. Yeah, that don't count. I had this thing. But ooh, that's subjective. Yeah. That is subjective. And it depends on what context you're talking about. I try to be a upstanding guy.
Mm-hmm.
I'd help out, help the old lady across the street, that kind of thing. Well, yeah. If nobody would ever know. Now, you saying I find 20 gold bricks, do you tell somebody?
Well, yeah, I think it all circles around the situation. I'll give you an example. When you're driving in your car, the speed limit says 55. Do you always go 55? No. Most people, they don't follow the speed limit. Most people don't.
Right.
If I was on one of those crews that got into one of Saddam's many mansions that were never used, and they ran across those pallets of money, and I was with my squad, I shudder to say that some of those stacks would have been taken and put in the rucksack and taken back to me to the United States. But if I'm walking down the street and I see somebody's wallet and it has driver's license, even if it has money in it, I'm gonna return it.
Yeah, definitely.
So it depends.
It just depends on the context.
Depends.
It depends on the context.
Is it a life or death situation? Is it I don't know.
Y'all are killing me.
Saddam was gonna miss that money.
Y'all are killing me, man.
I mean, come on, man. When they show those stacks of money on those pallets, come on, man. I know that team that first got dead. Come on, I'd have been looking at each other. Take whatever you can in your ruck. Nobody says a word. Out and out.
It happens.
Then the inventory started.
Them people found all that gold in that cave, and they was like taking pictures with it and stuff. Come on. If you didn't take it.
Okay.
We were like, hey,
Y'all killing me, man. Y'all killing me.
Mr. Rose thought this was going to go a different way.
I did. I really did. I really did.
and you put
No,
people in those
because
scenarios. If you was driving down the road and the back of the armored truck fell open or it was a wreck, and then there was the bag of
Which
money.
happened.
And the bag of money
I
was
think
right
it was
there, yeah.
in the
Would you take
Midwest. It happened many years ago, and there
Yeah.
were people stopping on the highway, jumping out, trying to grab money.
Yeah.
so y'all be like, won't he do it? God is good. All of that. That's how y'all look.
That was
You gotta
that was
ask
a
yourself,
sign.
You got to ask yourself, is this a test or a blessing?
Oh my God.
I'm going with the latter. It was a blessing.
Y'all are killing me. Okay.
God knew I had these bills.
Okay. Okay, hold on. Let's take a step back for a second.
Yeah.
I need you to think a little higher than that for just a moment. All right,
Okay.
just a moment. Why or ask this question, right? So the question is, would you still do the right thing? And I want you to take a step back and think a little deeper, because my question is, who says what the right thing is?
Or who
It didn't
determines what
say
the right
would you
thing is.
follow. It didn't say would you follow the law. It didn't say any of those things. It said, would you do the right thing if
Well,
nobody would ever see it? Right now, you guys just listening to you, your mind went straight to to some things.
well, the right thing is determined by what your moral compass is, your upbringing, what you've been taught.
That is
Okay.
it. I was just
So
about to say that.
once you come of age and you know right from wrong, you're going to have some semblance of a moral compass and what the right thing is. So that's going to determine what you're going to do in most cases. The example I gave, I know we've been joking, but I'm walking down the street and you see a wallet. Now, granted, let's say it has cash in. Now, obviously, somebody's going to need that cash.
Mhm.
The right thing, based on your moral compass, at least my moral compass, I'm going to return that wallet. I'm going to try the best to return that wallet. But I gave you the other example. If I rolled up on one of those mansions that Saddam Hussein had and it had all that cash, well, he ain't going to need that. I'm going to have to partake. So,
It's
no,
subjective. But I agree.
it's subjective.
It is definitely, in our culture, I think we have all been taught, especially being brought up in church. And, you got biblical context that, raise a child in the way he's supposed to be
Yeah.
raised. And
When they're
people
older,
won't depart from it. So
won't depart from
when
it.
they get
yeah.
Right.
older, and if we at that foundation, and I think that's something that's missing now, because the church is not the center of our community anymore. But back when we were kids, our churches were the center of the community, and we were all taught the right things to do. Now, you might not have done them all the time, but you can't say you weren't taught what the right thing, how that looked. So I think for a certain generation, we will always do the right thing when that time happens. But like you said about Saddam Hussein, subjective. But you hear a woman screaming, "Oh, he's killing me," or whatever. You're gonna do the right thing, or somebody, something as little as flat tire. You're gonna go help a person with the flat tire or whatever. I don't know. But I think it's definitely cultural, especially for us, and ho- how we were raised in the church. I'm gonna say in the church, how we were raised. Now, even people who weren't
Mm.
raised in the church, they still taught that we inherit know right from wrong. We're born with that. You don't have to be taught right from wrong. You're supposed to go slap your mama. We know that. Nobody told us that. So I believe we are born with the sense Now, doing it when nobody's watching or, nobody's around, I think that's cultural. How you were raised, basically. Me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's how you were reared and your moral compass that you were brought up with, that
Yep.
foundation that was established when you were younger, growing up. Now, whether you choose to do what is right and what is wrong based on that foundation and that moral compass that you were brought up with, that's a different story. Because um, I'm sure we all have kids. You taught your kids what was right and what was wrong, and try to establish some type of foundation with them so that they don't make the same mistakes that you made growing up. But there's some situations where they ended up going down a certain pathway when they didn't have to, and they knew better because they were taught better. But
Well, let me throw this in there. So I would say that uh, in life, it's more about um, not necessarily um, right and wrong, but ought to, like, because if you try to, nothing to me is black and white. Man-made laws are black and white, but then there's things that you ought to do, regardless of what the law says. Right? There's just certain things that you ought to do. And if it weren't for people who made the decisions to do what they ought to do versus follow the laws, then we wouldn't be where we are, right? Because the laws were not written in our favor, in our society, in our country. It took, you know, decades upon decades of people doing the right thing in terms of what they ought to do versus what the law said for us to be in the positions that we're in today. Because if they just followed the law black and white, then as I said, many of us, the three of us, we probably wouldn't even be here
Mm.
because those who came before us may have been subject to some law that was on the books at that time that they were in violation of simply because somebody wrote it in a way that they were destined to fail. But there were enough enablers around who said, no, I understand what the law says, but here's what we ought to do. And over time, some very smart, astute people followed the legalities and made it such that the laws were able to change. So again, you've got the law, and then you've got what you ought to do. And I think what you ought to do is that thing, as you said, Reggie, as the Bible teaches us, is written in our hearts.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So again, when you talked about the subjectivity, well, Saddam and his pallets of money or whatever, and if I read up on it, he ain't gonna miss it, kind of thing. I don't judge that because you could easily say, well, it's not yours, you shouldn't touch it. However, there's I'm not the one to ever judge that because I don't have the infinite wisdom to know the downstream effects of things that are going to happen. Right. In other words, if you leave it there, then it might be used by somebody to do some harm.
Mm.
But if you take it and it might be used by you to do some harm, you know what I mean? Like in a different way.
yeah,
So I don't know. I don't know. I just know that I try to approach it like, do what you ought to do. What you ought to do might not necessarily be in alignment with man's law.
Mm.
Is all I'm saying. And I can't I'm it also, I think that if you stay in the word as best you can, I think there's power in the word. And I think that if you read the word often, that certain things, that meter inside of you that says, here's what ought to happen.
Mhm.
I think that will guide you. But if you don't read at all and you have no concept of the word and you're just out here going simply by how you were raised, because a lot of us were raised and the word was nowhere around, right? I give an example. Um, I remember coming up in PG County, and back in those days, uh, I lived in some apartments right outside Andrews Air Force Base, and we grew up in a neighborhood, and the culture was one of survival.
Mm.
My mom's didn't make a whole lot of money. She did the best she could to raise her boys, but we experienced a lot of lack. So the right thing was always about survival, not breaking any laws, but we got to make it to the next day. We got to make sure we don't waste. We don't, So all of those things are driving me. But someone who had plenty, the right thing to do for them is probably looking a lot different than me.
Mm.
But neither one of us might be breaking the law, but each of us making decisions may impact others a certain way, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So that's why I say it depends. To me, it's you focus on what you ought to do. And yes, your upbringing is going to probably determine the decision that you make, but um, I don't think it should have that much of an influence on you once you become of a certain age.
Yeah.
And you start to think for yourself, regardless of how you were brought up, if that makes sense. So,
Yeah. That
Yes,
makes
once
a
you get
lot
to a
of sense.
certain age, yes, you know right from wrong, and you should do what you ought to do.
mhm,
But there may be instances where it might become subjective.
okay.
Mm.
It's just going to be, I think 99% of the time I'm going to do what I ought to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there might be that one tiny, it's not going to hurt anybody. I'll give you a funny story. Me and my son were in Paris prior to the Olympics, right? And we didn't know that you had to reserve spots. You just couldn't go up and get your tickets as maybe on a regular tourist day or get onto the app right there at the gate and, get your tickets to go into the Louvre.
Mhm.
So they weren't taking anyone else in.
Okay.
So I was like, me and my son here in Paris, we're all this way and we can't get into the Louvre. We're in IT. We know security because when you
Mhm.
get your CISSP or some certification, CISM certification, they deal with physical security as well. It's
Mhm.
all encompassing.
Right.
So I noticed something. It's a shift change with the guards.
Okay.
Somebody ain't paying attention.
Mhm.
I told my son, follow me and don't stop.
Okay.
So we start walking, and some European brethren saw what was going on. They jumped in line too. And we walked straight past while this exchange was going on, and we kept on walking. So we stuck into the Louvre. Was that the right thing to do? No. Did it harm anyone? No. Is it what I ought to do? No. But we did it anyway. The
So
point is that most of the time, most people are going to do what they ought to do. But there's instances where you might fall short. You might have to, when they call for people to come to the altar, well, I got to go up to the altar and confess.
wow.
I'm keeping it real.
I get it. I get it.
I'm keeping it real.
No judgment, but let me ask you something. Why do you think they cut it off and stopped letting people in?
Crowd
Probably
crowd control,
Fire
security because it's
fire marshal, fire hazard,
right.
safety.
Yeah.
Fire hazard. There you go.
Fire
So I'm thinking there was probably a reason why they did that. And so, and again, no judgment.
Folks ain't gonna make no difference.
I got you. No judgment. I'm just simply saying that there might have been a reason for it. And there could have been a situation that arose.
Yeah.
And they planned for a certain number of people, but then some others who said, it ain't gonna hurt anything. And then some other people who seen them and went on in there with them. And the butterfly effect being that now my man done taught his kid. I understand that there's some safety issues going on, but come on, man. Let's just do this. Because we flew all this way.
Or if a situation arose, because of my military background, I could have been a help in assisting whatever that emergency is.
Right. Well, and see, that's why I said,
God
earlier.
could have placed me in that position at that moment in time.
That's why I said earlier, I don't have the wisdom to know the downstream effects. I just simply know that when the time comes, in terms of doing what you ought to do, one of the things that I hadn't heard is this, and that is, the question was, if no one would ever know. Well, there's always one person who always knows. No, not you. It's somebody else who always knows. There you go. And so I'm human, and there will be situations that we all get into that will take your attention, regardless of what your upbringing is. You're in a situation, your mind goes to a place and you start making decisions, you start doing things. And a lot of times if it's a fast-paced situation, you don't always think, am I doing the right thing by what he would want? You're trying to make it through the situation. And in those situations, I fall short a lot of times. Then I think back and I like, man, I should have, this is probably the way I should have handled that. Especially, man, call it PTSD or whatever, but I just got this short fuse sometimes when somebody will, like I have very low tolerance for foolishness.
Yeah.
And then when it come at me fast,
you react.
It's a reaction. Mm-hmm. And then later I'll be like, man, I really shouldn't have done that. Right. Yeah. But when the situation is calm and I got time to think it through, I don't know that I'd be calculating the security measures of the place. Trying to. That's just me. That's just me.
Look, this pastor gave this sermon many years ago. And he said, if you're ever thinking about doing something wrong in your car, wherever, look to your right or left and imagine that Yeshua, Jesus, is right next to you. And all week long, if I'm driving, if you're having certain thoughts or whatever, I remember looking over. Jesus, you there? Like this the whole week. And
Right.
it's sat in my mind.
Mhm.
And he said, anytime you feel you're going to do something that you're not supposed to be doing, but you should be doing something that you ought to do, he said, imagine Christ is right next to you.
Mhm.
And I was
Oh,
like,
that's
man,
good.
that was pretty.
That's
That was
good.
pretty good. He said, imagine that he's with you right there. Now he's with you, but he was literally meaning he's physically, you can physically see him right there. And will you do
So
those things? Yeah.
look, he just wasn't there during the shift change.
He,
And so
he was there. It's just like, I was like, I don't see you. I don't see you. He was there. He was there because I was thinking, I was like, this, should I be doing this? But I was in the moment, man. Hey, I fell short. That's that flesh that you battle against.
absolutely.
That
I
flesh
Absolutely.
you
definitely
battle
think
against.
maturity plays a lot in becoming more self-aware, get into your word, that does play a lot. Even if you had as a youth, you was rambunctious and you was outside and you in and out the system, and once you got introduced to the word, that is supposed to change you too. And I think that happens with people. Because like you said,
Yeah.
some people didn't have it, that church upbringing like we did. They got it later. So
Yeah.
better late than never, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, I think that is one of the most overlooked aspects of God's design, meaning getting old and maturity. Because as I've gotten older, there are certain things physically I know I just can't do like I used to, especially when it comes to confrontation,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so now I'm forced to think first, where many years ago, it's whatever, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be, and you would think you're bulletproof. You think you're, whatever situation, especially if it came to having to throw hands. Yeah, I could probably handle myself. I might not win, but it's going to be a problem out here, that kind of thing. I don't even think like that now because I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I already know physically there's certain things I can't do, but this works. And I'm like, the how can I say, the wisdom in me says that might work. However, there's
Mm-hmm.
consequences with that. And it makes you think. So God's design in making you get to the point where physically you can't do certain things like you used to causes you to have to rely on wisdom.
Mm.
And I think that that gets overlooked. Like a lot of us, we curse getting older. Man, getting old, it's not for punks because this thing is rough. But the design is such that, I'm better. Even though
Mm.
physically I'm not where I was, overall I'm better than I used to be. So it's kind of how I see it, in terms of the decision making,
Yep.
But check this out, man. We were told y'all I was in Vegas, right, with my wife last week. And it's hot outside. I'm trying to get my wife in a cab to go right across the street because it's hot. I don't want her walking out there. She could have walked in the building, but it was a longer walk. You just, Mr. Cab Man, just take her right over here. The cab driver start tripping. I've been waiting 45 minutes, and all that's going to be is a 5-minute thing, and it's not worth my time. You can just walk. And plus, he had an accent. I think he was Middle Eastern. So that even more just got under my skin. And so now I'm ready. I'm going toe to toe with this dude. It's hot. I'm going toe to toe with him. And my wife is like, let it go. Don't engage. Like, I can just walk right over here. There's a train. You know, they had the little, whatever you call it, the tram that goes back and forth.
Yeah.
But because I reacted, you know, I'm thinking to myself, what are you worrying about? You were sitting out here for 45 minutes with 2 flat tires. How long you think you're gonna be sitting? You know, I'm running through that in my head.
Yeah.
And it took for her to say, it's just really not worth it. Let me just walk over here and get on this tram. And then when she said that, it bothered me more because I'm like, the tram got to go up that way and then come back to go to where you're trying to go, which is still better than walking, you know. But at the time, the way he responded,
Mm-hmm.
you know, not very customer friendly at all. And just, I'm like, man, I'm a guest in your town. I'm all kind of stuff running through my head. Plus, he only weighs 78 pounds. I was like, oh, this one, I can get this one. You know, you know what I mean? But after she got on there and she said what she said, I thought about it later and I was like, you know, the way I could have really got him to do it was say, pull out a 20 and say, hey, man, let's take her over there. And he would have done it. And, you know, you're tipping people the whole time you're there anyway. But because he came at me, I responded or I reacted. It wasn't even a response. It was a reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was his immediate escalation, and you met that escalation evenly. A couple years ago, I talked to this police officer guy I knew, PG County. He was SWAT.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think a lot of stuff was going on in the community, I forget the year and who was killed. It was just a lot of uproar. So I wanted to get his perspective on what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing he said, you know, Greg, when I approach a scene, I try to come in at a certain level, unless it's something that's active, shooting going on. Okay. He said, I try to come in at a certain level. I don't come in up here. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to approach whoever I'm dealing with at that minimal level. Now, if that person doesn't meet me at that minimum level and he's here, depending on what he does is going to decide how much I escalate. Okay. He might go a little above me and I still may choose to stay down here. Okay. Or I might just escalate a little bit past him to try to get the situation under control. Now, if he takes it up here to this level, then I have no choice but to take it to that level as well. So he said it's just on how you approach things. Just like you in the state of Georgia, in Texas, I've carried for many years.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I try to take into consideration, especially when my boys, they were taking martial arts, when they were getting to a point where some of the moves could have deadly consequences.
Mm-hmm.
So there's certain things that have to be settled before deadly force. And sometimes that settling of those items happens real quick. That's ability, opportunity. Ability is, do they have a weapon that can harm you? Opportunity, are they in proximity where they can harm you? Preclusion, that's the de-escalation. And then jeopardy. I fear for my life. Okay. So, yeah, that mindset, because I have to always have that mindset when I leave the house, because in a moment's notice, because I have a quick fuse, I know what can happen. And it happened a couple years ago at Costco when another person from that region, he got loud with my wife, and I addressed him, and before I knew it, my finger was on his nose, and I was face to face with him, very close. And he kept on going. The next motion, I had already pulled out my blade. that quick. So going back to what Rose says, you gotta sometimes watch your mindset and really think. Be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay. Okay. So it's all about thinking about. You said you don't have the wisdom. None of us do of what's to come if you do a certain thing. Because every time you do certain things in life, it creates reactions. Reaction. If you look over your life and you say, man, if I would have did this, then this possibly could happen. This pathway would have opened up, and you didn't see it back then, but man, now you see it. It's just like you ever seen one of those social media posts. You think if you go down this path, this is that God is leading you. You don't see exactly what it is, but then behind that door, behind that obstacle, you see the real blessing come forth, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But you see this, what looks like a big blessing going down this pathway, it's really not the way you want to go. So it's just having that mindset, and you touched on it, having the wisdom to sometimes do what is correct and what is what you ought to do. And I think most people will do what we ought to. I know we were joking earlier. Well, I still would have took
I
side
know you would. I know you would.
but keeping it real. But for the most part, we're all going to do what we ought to do.
Yeah.
Most people, especially you get to this age, we're going to do what we ought to do most of the time. But sometimes you still battle with that flesh.
Yep.
And that's a constant thing. You have to battle with that flesh. Look, just like Lot's wife, she got out of Sodom and was on her way, and she only had not to do one thing. And what?
Yep.
She looked back.
That joker look back.
Goofy.
Looked back,
Yeah.
and a pillar of salt.
I
So-
started to make a conscious effort to break stereotypes when people looked at me or reacted to what I did. And that became a habit. So I'm like, somebody's always watching you, whether you know it or not. Somebody's always watching you. And am I going to be the stereotype so where the other people be like, yep, see, that I knew it. Or I'm going to break the stereotype and give them another perspective. And how I started doing that when at Fort Benning, and when I was in high school, I was in carpentry, and I made a little bolo bat, little knocker. I had made it, shaved it down. It was only about 18 inches long, and I would keep it in my car. And I had the hoopty. That's what we called my car. I had the hoopty, and that car full of the fellas. We coming back on post, and that side gate before you go out, the Victory Drive gate. They had that little side one where the McDonald's was. They had a
Yeah. See.
And I see this man up on the bridge, and I said, well, because I'm driving, they're talking, they're not paying attention. But the person's when my car comes under there, he spits down, like almost like trying to spit on my car. And I was enraged. I got hitters because at that time we all was carrying guns. I turned and nobody knew because they weren't paying attention. I turned and I grabbed the stick, jump out the car. I'm like, oh no, you're not trying to spit on. First of all, it's a hoopty. No, it wasn't a BMW, it was the hoop.
Right. Right.
Needed a paint job and 3 hubcaps, And I was like, why would you spit on the hoopty? Not them other cars. I jump out, grab the stick, and I run to the bottom of the stairs. So now all the fellas are like, yo, it's going in because he done grabbed the stick. So now they getting ready to jump out. And when I get to the base of the stairs, I look up, it's a kid. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. You can hit me if you want to. And that was that moment for me, was like, this is this guy's mentality that, black guys are as violent. And I'm thinking in my head, what, he spit? That's disrespectful. Oh, if it and it was a man, but because he was so far away, I thought it was a man. But when I got to the base of the stairs and get ready to go up, it was a kid. And then that was the catalyst for me to say, I'm going to start breaking these stereotypes, because that was his stereotype. And I was like, dude, by the time I looked up and said, dude, all the fellas had came out of the car. It was like, yo, what? And I was like, do you see all of these? Something bad could happen to you. Stop doing that. So I taught a lesson instead of giving them a beating, but that was the catalyst for me to start breaking stereotypes and doing what you ought to do. I would try to make that a habit and teach that to all these knucklehead boys and kids who are in my stead. So that is for me. Busting these stereotypes, made it a habit and of doing what you ought to do. And that comes with wisdom. That was a moment, because that was a moment for me. It was going to be
You know,
on.
I wonder if I know some of these hitters.
Yeah, all of them. Every one of them.
No, no, but
Every one of them.
so I can imagine. Yeah. The thing for me is, over the last few years, participating in so many funerals at church.
Mm.
And the message always is funerals are for the living. So we tell the living that this is not the end. There's a continuation.
Mm-hmm.
We're all going to be on the other side one day. And we should rejoice in that. But if you believe that, then how you behave right now is going to have impact on what that looks like on the other side. And once I, years ago, got that ingrained in me, that's what makes it easier for me to do what I ought to do. Because I'll just put it this way. I got a lot of making up to do. Because there's some things that happened in the first half of my life that, that just wasn't cool. And it's beyond the first half, right? But then when I became a new creature and my eyes were opened, one, I knew I had to make changes moving forward. Two, it was easy. It wasn't difficult, because when I became new, it's who I am now.
Correct.
But I still have memories, and I still remember, that was foul, and I had to repent. And every time one of these memories come up, I repent again. And I'm like, man, that sure is a whole lot of memories, because things just keep popping into my head about stuff that happened. And I'm always like, I can't believe I did that. And I have to repent, ask God for forgiveness, because even now I say to myself, I don't even know what I was thinking. Like, I don't even understand. It's not even in my nature to even want to do anything like that now. And I speak a lot of times when I talk about the past about how I used to be, because it was in my nature back then. It really was. It was like part of who I was. But now I think about some of those things and I'm disgusted by it. And so moving forward in terms of doing what I ought to do, years ago, Greg, to be honest with you, I probably would have, with the pallets, I probably would have snatched a little something, with Saddam's, whatever, in his mansions and all that. And probably wouldn't even have blinked, just did it.
Yep.
But now the thought of that don't even sit well with me, right?
And
Because
it's not
I'm like,
supposed to. It's not supposed to.
well, but here's the thing: the
Once we
reason why
become
it doesn't,
new, we're supposed to
yeah,
throw away all that stuff.
no, but the reason why it doesn't sit well with me is because I'm a firm believer that I'm gonna have so much better on the other side, right? I firmly believe that, and it's not just about material things either, because when we talk about the funeral situation and you're trying to comfort a family, it's when you believe that in your core, it's easy to talk to someone and say, "Man, it's gonna be better," and we have to believe it. We're gonna be better on the other side. That person is gone, and if anybody need to be sad, it's you about you. You don't need to be sad about them because they're good. It's
Yeah.
you that still got some years to deal with this foolishness down here.
Yeah.
We need to be sad about that. But they're good. We're trying to get there. Right. So I really believe that in my core. And so the question about would I do certain things if no one would ever find out if they weren't watching or whatever, I always think, sorry, not always. When I am conscious and able to, I think about the other side. But sometimes when those situations pop up and my trigger response is just come with whatever's on my mind at that time,
Just pure reaction.
yeah, I fall short. I admit that. That cab driver almost caught one. Because it was hot outside too, man. It was hot. He
Yeah.
out in that
Yeah.
fully.
Outside circumstances, yeah, it does
So,
that.
so yeah. I mean, it's
Because
too
we're
hot for that.
human. We're
Well, but
human.
bro, you can't be 78 pounds and it's 111 outside. And you telling me that my wife just should walk. That's the wrong thing to do right now.
Yeah.
Right? That's just
There you go. He said something about the wife, and
yeah.
and that's where I lost it. Yeah.
But it was my wife who said, chill, don't engage. It's okay.
See, that's your balance, your helpmeet. She was trying to.
That's right.
Right.
She knows you.
I give her so much credit for how I'm living today. You just wouldn't believe. Like she is my anchor. Right. But at that moment, I was like, oh,
It's the heat.
okay.
It's the heat.
Yeah, I know. It's that PG County, and it's still you could take him out of PG County, but you're not going to take PG out of it. There's going to be a little smidgen of it always left in him. Yeah, it is what it is.
We
Don't
gotta
fight
fight
it.
daily.
No, but what's funny, man, you say that. That needs to be studied though. Like everybody that I know from PG, like everybody that I've run across in my adult years that I didn't know growing up, but just know that they're from there and we talk, everybody was programmed with, I don't know what it's called, but it's just, we was just all
PG
programmed
County.
with that. Yeah.
It ain't just PG County.
Well, we only could talk because that's what we know,
Right.
And I know you're right, Reggie. There's people from California, from New Orleans. Everybody could say it. It's just, but there's just something that's in there that if you're from that certain area, just like I could relate to certain things with D-Row. If you were in California and two guys from a certain area in California, they could relate to certain things. It is what it is.
Yes.
I can understand the lingo, how you talk, how you say certain things. If I say Ben's Chili Bowl, everybody going, "Oh, I use street." Everybody.
Look, I can smell it. I can smell it right there. I can smell it when you say it.
Yeah. It's just certain things that you know. If I say, Celebrity Hall or the Black Hole or something like that, even if you never partake, or say EU or Essence, or if you're from the area, you have something in common where you know. So when you say that, and you went there, and then the heat on top of that, we get it.
It makes you angry.
Yeah.
Well, I compare it to with what you just said. I compare it to veterans versus non-veterans, right?
That's
Like
good. Yeah.
when you're out in wherever public, when you could be at church, what have you. Um, there's just certain things that you don't have to explain to a veteran. You can say a few words and don't have to explain, and they get it. And I'm at the point now. I've come to realize that I don't hold it against people for not understanding why certain things are important to us as veterans because they don't have the same experiences, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of why I started this podcast, because I wanted a platform for us to just talk so they can understand how we think. And hopefully, if they care to uh, understand us and be able to relate to us better, that's because we probably said some things today that just sound a little wild to certain people. But being a veteran, you don't have to explain it um, to one another. When you said Saddam and you said the pallets and the money, yeah, that sounds like wow, like a movie I might have saw or something. But there's a lot that goes with that. There's a lot that goes with how we got to where we were, how we got in there to see the pallets, the dangers that were faced. And you ain't got to explain all that. We know everything you went through to get in that room to see all that. And I can understand why you were like, man, yeah, I got to get this. I went
leaving here with something.
through all that to get right.
Yeah, take what you carry, keep your mouth shut.
That's it. And you didn't have to explain that to me. I get it. You know what I mean? But to somebody else, it might sound like that joker greedy, and he just thieving, all of that.
Yeah.
But you ain't got to explain that to me. I get everything that you go through to get there, and then what you're gonna face when the higher ups get there and want to take credit for everything you did. Right? So you got to get yours. You got to, I get it. You didn't have to explain that to me. But others probably didn't understand all of that stuff. And that's why I tease, but I get why you was, okay, security. It's a shift change. We came all this way. We going to do what we got to. I get it. You don't got to explain to me. I get it, And so.
But is it what you ought to do?
No, and that's the thing. Yeah. It's maybe it's not what you ought to do. A lot of times, many of us come up with the belief that there are degrees of sin.
No, sin is sin.
Exactly.
Sin is sin. Yeah,
but
no little thing.
But here's the thing. Some people might sin and say, well, nobody got hurt. Right? Other sins might be very detrimental, and a lot of people get hurt. But that's what I'm saying. If you have that mentality where there's degrees, then you're more likely to not do the right thing. Yeah. As if no one's going to get hurt. Right? So that's why I said I wanted you to take a step back and think at a higher level, because those types of things have to be taken into consideration if you are a true believer and you know what's in store for you on the other side.
Yeah.
Right. So that's all, man. Just, day to day, try to remember that and do the best you can, man. That's all. That's all I can say.
Do the best you can.
Yeah. Pray every day.
So, so right now, like I told you, I was in Vegas. It was 111. 111, just an easy 111 too. It wasn't like it was trying to get there. It was just 111 just off the rip, right? Every day that we were there. Like now here's the thing. You know how you you pull out the weather app and you say, what's the weather going to be for the next few days? And on the weather app, it's going up and down, and it might, but when that local news come on and that cat says, oh, well, the high is 111, and the low is going to be 89 tonight. Like every day though. So I'm trying to understand living in a place like that. First of all, shout out to people who live in places like that and thrive. Because I don't see how that's possible. Right. But when they call Vegas Sin City, I think it's because it's too hot. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you get hot out there, you just do some stupid stuff, man. And like I told you, the cab driver said a little something slick to me. And then he involved my wife. And so now I'm like, I know it wasn't the right thing to do now.
They need to do their boulay in the cooler months. That's what they need to do.
Well, they say when it gets warmer, crime goes up.
Yeah, that's the actual statistic.
Okay. Well, I was almost a statistic. Yeah, I was almost a statistic. And
that is a real statistic.
Your boy almost caught a case because I was like, and unfortunately, and I only share this because I really, for a split second, lost it. Like if my wife wasn't there to say what she said, I'm thinking back to the experience.
You don't know what would happen.
Right. I'm thinking back to the experience.
Pastor Dr. Dennis Rose has snatched up a cab driver in Las Vegas.
Man. No, but there were too many, I guess, aspects and circumstances tied into that situation. Meaning, it's hot. You only weigh 78 pounds. You got this accent, and it's hard for me to understand you. And then you doing this like she can just walk. That's a problem for me.
Oh, he said,
yeah, she could just walk.
Shoot her.
Yeah. So,
D-Rose, I might have caught him one. I might have caught him one. I would have to ask for forgiveness. I might have just
at least walk around and snatch that door open. What?
No, yeah. but what I'm saying is, thinking back, there were no breaks. You know what I mean? Like there was no breaks. It was all go, no breaks, and it was her voice that was like, snap out of that. Come on, whatever. And even then, I was still like a child pouting, lucky, because I still felt a little something in me, but again, I'm sharing it because that's one of the few times where I said one of, because there's been others. That's one of the few where for a moment in time, I had no breaks. I had no cares. That the only thing that mattered was he was wrong in my mind. And and the situation was right. Again, you 78 pounds. You know what I'm saying? I'm about to fold you up, out here. And then quickly though, soon after that, stuff popped in my head like, this is Vegas, cameras everywhere. Like I'm just going to be dead wrong.
Wisdom. That's what that's called. That's called wisdom.
But,
wisdom.
So in terms of doing what you ought to do, that's an experience where it wasn't knowing what I ought to do until later.
Yeah.
Right. At the moment, I didn't know what I ought to do. I ought to snatch this cat up. That's what I was thinking. I ought to, but it wasn't right. So,
you done good, brother. You done good.
You're very good. God gave you her for a reason.
Yeah. Shout out to your wife.
Had it been somebody else, you might not have heeded the heeded what she said. Like, so shout out to your wife.
Oh,
Like if
yeah.
Greg Henry was standing next to you, D Rose, tighten that dude up.
Like, I'd have been like, block the cameras. You know what I'm saying? Like that. Right. But no, real talk, man. But on that note, do you guys have any final thoughts on the topic? If no one would ever know, would you still do the right thing? Any final thoughts on that?
I think we, being believers, first and foremost, it's in the front, not even in the back of our minds, but in the front of our minds, is He's always watching. So we are supposed to govern ourselves as if the Most High is watching us, and that will ensure that we're always doing the right thing, even when nobody's watching. Supposed to.
Mm. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's good, Reg. Yeah, you asked a question earlier, D Rose. There's someone who's always watching, and that's God. He's always watching everything that we do, and He knows. So you're gonna have to look at yourself and determine: are you willing to disappoint Him? Are you willing to disappoint yourself? Are you willing to disappoint family? So you just have to make the determination on how heavy is that possible repercussion, So that's the determination you'll have to make for yourself. But I'll go back to what I said. I think for the most part, most people will do what you ought to do, regardless of who's watching. But then you still battle with that flesh sometimes. So we all strive to do what's right.
Well, so you said something earlier about the moral compass. And I think it was profound because it's one thing when an individual either ignores it, doesn't have it, or loses it. But when an entire society loses its moral compass, eventually the society loses its sense of direction. And if you just look around us right now, the direction that we're going in as a society, not as individuals, but as a society, and how we're seen across the world, it is evident that we're not being led by a moral compass, a working one anyway. And so God's perfect design, where we as individuals have these moral compasses that you mentioned, and Reggie, he said, where these things are written on your heart. I think you have to keep that in mind, as Reg said, at the forefront. Not like me, when it's hot and the cab driver weighs 78 pounds. It wasn't at the forefront. No, it wasn't at the forefront of my mind. But, I got to learn from that, and I got to do better. And, so just a moment of transparency. I lost it for a minute, but I'll do better. Better.
All right.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. And as always, we'll do this again soon. And may God keep you. May God be with you. And listen, I really appreciate this one because it felt like a therapy session. Like I had to get this one off. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I needed somebody to. I needed somebody to tell that one too because I blacked out, man. I was lost on that one. But again, thank you so much, gentlemen, and we'll do this again soon. All right.
Hey, most
right.
definitely.
Thank you.
Most definitely.